Okay, so welcome back. As you can see, we're doing things a little differently today. With the recent release of the Oscar nominations, I really wanted to take the chance to go back to the year of 2022 and talk about all the movies I got to see during that year. So this channel usually focuses on more the historical stuff, but I still wanted a chance to kind of be able to put my thoughts out there on a lot of the movies that got released for this year, because there's a lot of them. So I'm going to open up this tier list here and go through and rank alphabetically each one and where I think it fit for this year in film. Now, I'm not going to claim that I've seen every movie from this year, okay? I haven't, but I have seen a lot, and we're going to rank the ones that I did see. All right, let's start with All Quiet on the Western Front. Again, this is going to be a little different from my usual format, a little more off the cuff, just kind of like thoughts off the top of my head, stuff like that. So hopefully it doesn't turn out terrible. It's my first time doing something like this. We'll see. Here we go. All Quiet on the Western Front. We're going to start with that, alphabetically, like I said. You know, I really enjoyed All Quiet on the Western Front. I really did. Of course, it looks spectacular. All the battle stuff looks amazing, but really when you get down to it, it comes down to kind of the original book and the message that had. It's one of the most famous anti-war films. Its goal is really to get across that war is hell, and I think it was very successful in doing this. This was one of my favorite movies of the year. I thought the performances were great. I thought it was just a great looking movie overall. I wish I could have seen it in theaters, but again, Netflix seems to hate theaters and doesn't want me to be able to see their beautiful movies on the big screen, so that's a shame. But I'm still, regardless, putting it in the A tier here. Oh, okay. This one's All the Old Knives, which is a Amazon Prime movie. I was home for Christmas, and my family decided just through scrolling through movies to watch this one. This one, not a big fan of it. I'm not gonna lie. If I was to describe it one way, I would say it would be death by shot, reverse shot. I think they had Chris Pine. I always confuse the Chris's. They had Chris Pine for literally like one day, I think. So they had him shoot a few things in the studio, and then they put him in a restaurant and then just did shot, reverse shot with him. And then got to have a spicy sex scene with him too, I guess. So there's that. So the most boring blocking possible, shot the cheapest it can. It's not great. I would not recommend it. And even if you get down to the story too, it's kind of more of a thriller, but the problem is once you really start to think about the ending, the characters' choices don't really make a ton of sense. Like there's one character that's willing to let a ton of people die, but then makes a choice at the end of the movie that like almost retroactively like undoes. And it's stupid. I didn't care for it. Not a fan. Not a fan. What is this? Ambulance! Michael Bay Strikes Back. A lot of people are probably going to want to hate on this movie, you know, just simply because it's Michael Bay. They're going to go, it's Bay-him, so it must just be bad. But I saw this on a plane, and honestly, it was a good way to kill a couple hours on the plane. I thought the action scenes were pretty enjoyable for being relatively low budget compared to most of his other stuff. The main reason I found it probably mostly enjoyable, Jake Gyllenhaal plays this completely like unhinged character that's actually pretty amusing to watch and stuff. So I got a kick out of that. So I'm not gonna lie, I actually did have a good time with this. I enjoyed it. So good for you, Ambulance. You fortunately get to somehow squeeze your way into one of the few tolerable Bay movies. Congratulations. Okay, Amsterdam, latest movie from David O. Russell. A lot of people are ready to hate on this, I think, because David O. Russell's in a bit of hot water. I don't honestly remember what he got canceled for, or if he's canceled, or what's going on. He has made lots of good movies in the past. I'll give him that, regardless of whatever hot water he's in right now. Honestly, I did not think this movie was the worst. I don't remember the plot almost at all. I'm having to do this off the cuff again. I remember the plot being kind of contrived and kind of a mess, but I remember I really liked the characters, and I really liked the actors performing, and I really liked the actors performing in their roles. I thought that they had great chemistry all together, and for me, that made watching the movie actually a kind of pleasant experience overall, even if it did have some issues, I would say. I mean, again, the plot's not great. I'm fluctuating between this C and B here. I think you're just barely going to squeeze out into that B category there because, honestly, I didn't hate you, and I liked the actors in it, and I enjoyed watching them, and they all gave good performances, I would say. Avatar: The Way of Water. The movie everyone loves to hate, even though, personally, I don't think that it's worth hating. I mean, I can understand if you don't like it. I think the reason it gets so much vitriolic just hate is because it's Avatar, and it's the most highest grossing film ever, and the sequel to it. It tends to be that gets a lot more fire. When it was Titanic, a lot of people like to crap on that one a bunch. It's Avatar, lots of people like to crap on that. Even when In-Game had it for the very, very short time, lots of people seem to be wanting to crap on that just by comparison to, I think, Infinity War. But honestly, I actually like this one better than the original. I know it got worse reviews and stuff than the original did. But the plot was less straightforward. It wasn't just a regurgitation of something like Pocahontas in space or something like that. It instead was something a little more, I won't say it's the most original thing in the world, but it was less of this stock template, which made it more interesting where it was going to go. Also, it concentrated way more on the kids than it did the adults, so you weren't having a lead like Jake Sully, who was the main character through the entire thing. You had characters that may not be the most complex, but they're at least not, boring, white bread, boring, dumb idiots like Jake. So that's a bonus in my book. Overall, I enjoyed it. I'm not going to claim it's the best thing on the face of the planet, but it's not the worst thing either. So congratulations, Avatar. You're gonna get to have some fun here. Babylon. Aw, poor Babylon. The biggest thing that's soul crushing for this is I love this director. Whiplash is one of my favorite movies ever. I love La La Land. First Man, don't like it as much as the other two, but still really good. Babylon is like watching a house of cards just crumble and come crashing down. This was made for an absurd amount of money, and it is just complete. It's a mess. It's just excess. Yeah. Sorry, Babby. Oh, Banshees of Inisherin. I loved this movie. This movie was great. They keep pitching it as a comedy. I would not say it's a comedy, and people who go in looking, thinking they're going to have a laugh-out-loud movie, that's not necessarily what you're going to get, because there are funny parts in it, and you will probably laugh at some parts. But I would describe this more as kind of like a farce. It's more interested in kind of showing off this ridiculous scenario of two friends breaking up for no reason and the existential crisis that comes along with it. I also love how the director ties that back in as kind of this allegory for civil war and how he sees an entire conflict like that like cutting off the nose to spite the face. In this case, in many ways, kind of literally. This was a brilliant movie. Loved it. I was thinking about it way after I saw it, and to me, that is a mark of a good movie. 2 thumbs up. It's going to S tier. This is the good stuff. This is what dreams are made of, as they say. Barbarian, probably my favorite horror movie of the year. I really enjoyed this one. A lot of people kept saying, oh, you should go into it blind because it's going to be way better that way. I hate to be the bearer of bad news. That's every movie. If you go in blind, you're probably going to have a better experience with it. Maybe not every movie, but if you go and see it, you're going to enjoy it more if you kind of don't know what's going to happen and you know nothing from the trailers or anything. That's how at least I like to see stuff. I don't always get that option because I follow movies too much, so I go to too many theater movies, so I always see the trailers. But Barbarian is great. I really liked kind of how it was a down the rabbit hole movie. Very creative. The tunnel scenes all have good tension to them and stuff. It does, I think, have some third act issues. I was not a big fan how it all kind of came together at the very, very end, which is common for these movies that are what I like to call the rabbit hole movies. Lots of times what makes them fun is going down that rabbit hole, and as soon as you're done going down the hole, you have to find some way to tie it all together, and not all movies can do that in a way that feels, fulfilling. Sorry to Bother You was another one of a film I really, really loved, but it had the same issue, I would say, at the very, very end, even though that movie did make my top 10. Bardo, another soul-crushing, sad one for me. Again, I really like this director. I think he's really good. I love Birdman. Revenant's really good. But this one is an exercise in excess, similar to Babylon. I'm starting to think that a lot of these great directors during the pandemic, they went and made these much, much more art house films that they didn't have kind of restrictions put on them at all, I guess, because all of them just went to streaming. Anyways, I don't know what happened, but it was still just shot so well. It looked so good, but I just couldn't get into any of the characters or anything, and I felt that it is kind of a chore to get through, in my opinion. So, sorry. I know some people really like that one, but that's me. Black Adam, on the other hand, S tier. No, it's not S tier. It is as solid as C tier as I could possibly give it. Is that C tier? It's got some fun action scenes. I actually like Dwayne Johnson in the role. I thought he was pretty fun. I find him charismatic in most movies he's in. He doesn't have a lot of range, but he's kind of just got that personality that makes him fun to watch. So I like that aspect. What I didn't like so much is it being color graded to look like dirt, the plot being just razor thin. It's another chasing the MacGuffin. I dislike that it looked like it was stealing from every single superhero movie ever created. I saw someone once say that it looked like a movie that was written by an algorithm that just analyzed all superhero movies from the last about 20 years. That, I think, is an accurate description of Black Adam. It doesn't have an original bone in its body, and everything it's taking has been done somewhere else way better. So that's where I am on that. So it's a C movie if I've ever heard one. On the other hand, Wakanda Forever. Yeah, pretty good. I liked it. I enjoyed this movie quite a bit. I thought that it had a lot of interesting, difficult challenges with Chadwick Boseman's death, and it had to kind of ride the line of being both a tribute to him while also being kind of a satisfying movie on its own. And I thought it succeeded in that. It does have some issues. It's way too bloated, I think. I think you could have cut quite a bit out. I think the character of Riri Williams is weak and kind of shoehorned in, and she's basically like a human MacGuffin, which I'm kind of over the MacGuffins at this point, especially in superhero movies. I thought the villain was great. I think that all the actors just did such a good job. And you can see there was a lot of passion in it, and they wanted it to be this great send-up to Boseman, as well as being a great movie on its own. And I personally think it succeeded in that. I think it's one of the stronger movies, definitely one of the stronger movies in Phase 4, at the very, very least. And I'm going to be honest here, you are going to see a lot more stuff kind of in the upper part of this graph here, because I tend to try and seek out movies I want to watch and that I think I'm going to enjoy, and I don't really try and seek out movies that I think I'm going to hate. Probably you will see it weighted higher at the top. Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. This is a fun one. This was one where a lot of people made fun of it when the trailers came out, I think, because it looked like it was just catering to the Gen Z audience to the point of being pandering. But it turns out they were in on the joke, and that's good, because basically what it really is it's a mystery second and a Gen Z parody first. And I found it to be really fun. I found it to be a good time. Some people may figure out the ending before it hits. I think I figured it out about halfway through by the time that the second or third person died. I finally went, oh, I get it. I get what's happening here. I kind of didn't think it was going to be that, because I'm like, oh, it's got to be more clever than that. But I think it kind of shows its hand a little bit too much, so that the ending isn't quite as shocking as maybe they thought it was going to be. But overall, a fun time, good cast, and a good little locker room mystery. And I like a good locker room mystery, so we're going to put it here in the B tier, of course. Excellent. Look at that. I'm getting good at Photoshop. Bullet Train. Bullet Train is a bit of a mess, but it is a fun mess, mostly because the cast of characters, they're a lot of fun. I found the characters to be really entertaining. The actors seem to be having just a complete blast, and I think that energy of the actors having that much fun on set is 90% of the reason why this works. Also, the cinematography is cool. It's very bright, very saturated. They seem to be almost taking a lot of inspiration from kind of like the color in like anime, stuff like that. Even though I do not think it's the sharpest script, I do not think it's the deepest characters, I think its sense of having fun is infectious, and that's why it's going in a solid B. You see, I give a lot of B's, so... Okay, Chip and Dale, rescue me. I know the theme song. I grew up with this show, which is part of the reason why I probably liked it so much. Usually these reboots, they become like Alvin and the Chipmunk movies where you want to, I don't know, put your head down a garbage disposal and in your suffering. This is not exactly loyal to the idea of the original show. It's more making fun of the kind of adaptations like Alvin and the Chipmunks, and they're doing it through a property like Chip and Dale. But it's still pretty fun and entertaining. Pretty funny. I enjoyed it. The one downside I would say is that most of its best jokes and stuff are unfortunately in the trailer, except for the Sonic one. The Sonic one's really good. Most of the other ones, they showed too much there. I think if I went in blind, I probably would have liked it even more. But I liked you. You can go in front of Ambulance. Ambulance probably doesn't have much right to be in the B tier anyways, to be completely honest. Oh, here we go. Disney's Pinocchio. This is a masterclass on how not to do a live-action adaptation of a animated product. I'm of the opinion they should stop doing these adaptations in general because they're basically soulless remakes of vastly superior films. I can name maybe only like two that are actually any good. I think the two are like Jungle Book and I don't even know what the other one, maybe it's just Jungle Book. Pinocchio is basically like if you made a list of everything to do wrong on one of these adaptations, it would hit every single one. It's a marvelous disaster, from Tom Hanks' terrible performance to the uncanny valley stuff with Pinocchio. And just changes that structurally make no sense to do because it just makes it work. Like, they go to Pleasure Island, and instead of actually doing bad stuff like drinking and smoking, they instead go there and they drink root beer, and I guess they chop stuff up. Bad kids. No, F. For sure, F. Bad. Not good. Doctor Strange 2. I had very mixed feelings on this one. This one was a hard one to pin down if I actually liked it or not at first, because it has so many good things going for it. The cast is great. I think Elizabeth Olsen is doing a really, really good job with kind of just playing this horror character in this case. Unfortunately, if you are a fan of WandaVision, it feels like a step backwards for her character, because she is a villain in that one too, but it's done in a compelling way that's interesting. Whereas in this one, it's like, oh, she's controlled by a demon book. Great, that's not that interesting. And then Doctor Strange himself, Benedict Cumberbatch, he's great in most things he's in. They really don't give him much to do besides kind of protecting this kid. It oversells its concept. It's called Multiverse of Madness. They go to only two other multiverses, really, besides the one montage sequence. They go to one universe that's basically our universe that's slightly different, with slightly different technology, and they have like pizza balls instead of pizzas, which is great. That's a madness of a multiverse there. And then they go to one more. So there's no actual universe hopping. So I think that the original director, and I forget his name, I'm blanking on it now, but the original director had a much more interesting idea of them being trapped in this haunted house while, I guess, Scarlet Witch is chasing them down. I think that would have been a way more interesting idea. Instead, they kind of overpromised on it being a multiverse, and as a result, lots of people were making theories and stuff, and it didn't really deliver on those. But I do think there's a lot of fun sequences in it and stuff. I think Elizabeth Olsen gives a really good performance. I think that it's just a very mid-tier Marvel movie. I don't think there's anything offensive about it. I don't think there's anything really great. I'm fluctuating between these two. I'm going to push it up to here because I didn't hate it. I thought it was fine. It was fine. Elvis, recently nominated for an Academy Award that I have opinions on. Maybe if I do an Academy Award video, I'll go into it in more detail. But Elvis, I actually don't mind Baz Luhrmann. I actually really like Moulin Rouge. But this movie tried my patience. It was, in my opinion, complete style over substance. I thought that Austin Butler did a great job in the lead role, but I felt they used Elvis as a character more as a prop to like push the story forward. So even though I thought his performance was great, man, this movie was trying on me. Oh, and Tom Hanks is just awful in it. He's like, his accent's terrible. Every scene he was in, I was just like, what are you doing? Why is this happening? I'm sorry, it's a C. It's C. It's almost B. I know a lot of people, especially the boomers, are really going to hate me for that one. Such is life. It is definition of style over substance for you. So sorry, Elvis, you're a bummer to me. So I'm going to be a bummer to you. Everything Everywhere All at Once. I love this movie. This movie is probably hands down my favorite of the year. I thought that it was absolute blast. It was creative. It had creative energy. You got to see a lot of actors that had kind of been sidelined for a while get to be pushed back to the forefront again and just give amazing performances. It's funny we just did Doctor Strange because this was a movie that fully embraced how mad a multiverse could really be and the potential for it, as it really explored a lot more like diversity just in the idea and concept. And at the same time, it kept everything still rooted in this very family story that could kind of tug at your heartstrings in the right moment. And I like having my heartstrings tugged on, I'm going to be honest. So there we go. It's number 1 right now. S tier for sure. Fantastic Beasts. Oh, how you've disappointed me through the years. I am actually one of the people that really enjoyed the first one. Well, maybe not really enjoyed, but I enjoyed it. I thought it was a cute little kind of spin-off movie, and it should have ended there as just this one-off spin-off. I think that their attempts to stretch this into a full franchise has been extremely misplaced, because they're not even interested in the leads of Fantastic Beasts anymore. They want to tell the story of Dumbledore and Grindelwald, which is fine. Go have them be their own franchise and make that. Instead, they're trying to shoehorn this story in with these other characters, and it just doesn't mix at all. Even worse, I disliked the second one so much, I don't remember anything that happened in it. I erased it out of my brain. So I came into this, and they really think I remember that movie way better than I did, because I was confused on a lot of who the characters were, what was happening, and overall, not an enjoyable experience. Probably one of my least favorite movies of the year. You're just going in here. I'm not even bothering. I'm going to stop bothering. Just sort this bottom segment down here. When you're bad, you're just bad. You know, it doesn't matter which one's more bad. Bad's bad, right? Fires of Love. I'm going to admit that one of my biggest weak points is I do not watch enough documentaries, which is weird because usually I actually do like documentaries when I finally sit down and watch them. I just don't watch enough of them, and for some reason, I just never seek them out. So, but this is one that was recommended to me, and I'm so glad I got to watch this. This one is about the volcano. I was about to say volcano people. That makes them sound like lava monsters. No, the volcano researchers that are two married couple, that how they met, how they got into it. It's a story about life passion, I think, a lot, with a bit of a tragic end. I highly recommend this. I think it's one of the best documentaries of the year, if not the best documentary of the year, and I completely enjoyed it. Well, as you'll see, it may be the only documentary on this list, so maybe that's not that big of an accomplishment, but I still really enjoyed watching this one. Glass Onion. Okay. Now, there's a big thing with sequels. Sometimes you get a movie out like Knives Out that is so creative and fun and really manages to capture the spirit of the genre, and they go, great, we're going to make a series out of it, and you know it's not going to be able to reach the quality of the original. Now, I'm not going to say Glass Onion did reach the quality of the original. I think I still liked it a little bit more, but what it did is it managed to not make the same mistake of just trying to do the exact same thing a second time. It took risks, and it really tried to make it very, very different by having this almost murder mystery party on like this Willy Wonka island, I guess. It kept me guessing who was the actual murderer, which is great. I really like that. It still had the social themes and commentary of the original. Great. Daniel Craig, his character with his ludicrous accent. It's a lot of fun. I really enjoyed this. My only wish is I could have seen it in theaters with a crowd. I actually tried to, and my whole family tried to. So we were looking to go see it in theaters, but it was already gone because, again, Netflix hates money. They do not like money. And they took it out of theaters and put it on their streaming services and probably lost themselves millions of dollars. So good job, whoever's running that program. Jurassic World Dominion. The Taken of the dinosaur movies. No, it's not the Taken of the... It's the Taken 3 of the dinosaur movies, okay? This movie was awful. I actually ended up doing an entire Jurassic Park marathon of all the films leading up to this because they're like, it's the last one. It's not going to be the last one. They may stop for maybe like 2 years and then they'll keep going. I've seen bad Jurassic Park movies. This is the first Jurassic Park movie where it was boring. I was bored through the entire thing. There was no tension in it. They did not capitalize on their idea of dinosaurs being just in our real world and us having to learn how to live with them. Instead, they focus more on locusts than the dinosaurs for the first part, and then they quickly just go straight to another park. I mean, it's not technically a park. It's like a reserve or something like that, or a research facility, but it's basically another park. And it's just like, why? Why would you do this? The characters, all the new characters at this point, I'm one of the defenders, probably, of the first Jurassic World. I think it's big, dumb creature feature, but it's fun. These characters are all disposable, the new ones, and the old ones, they waste completely. They do not make the most out of that. For that reason, Jurassic World is a great big boring mess that I hope to never have to sit through and watch again. Lightyear. Lightyear gets a lot of hate, but I'm not going to lie, I really enjoyed the first half of this movie. I think it's not really a great movie for kids, but neither was Soul, and I really love Soul, and I thought the idea they had of Buzz basically constantly trying to get it right and save his people, but in the process he's time jumping, and a lot of his friends are getting old and moving on without him. I think that's a great idea, and I thought that whole beginning part was just fantastic. I really, really enjoyed it. And then you had to get to the second half, and the second half is miserable. It is all the cliches from kids' movies, you know, annoying sidekicks that the main character has to train up and kind of recruit and go, this is my new team and family, despite the fact they're mostly useless and irritating. So I thought it had a great start that completely at the halfway mark shifts gears and falls right on its face, and it never recovers whatsoever. It's I'm fluctuating between this and this. I think it's one of the worst pictures Pixar has ever made, if simply because of the level of disappointment from that early, like, great beginning to just absolute misery. So, speaking of misery, here we go. I'm not going to say it. I will say that this movie is a great example of why Sony cannot be trusted with the toys that they're given. They had Marvel right now carrying stuff for them over in the MCU for that stuff. And then on the other animation side, they got Lord and Miller carrying it for them. And meanwhile, in their own house, they're making stuff like Morbius, which is like a superhero movie from the early 2000s. Bad lead characters, bad effects, bad story, bad action scenes. There is nothing redeemable about this movie in my mind. I mean, Matt Smith is about it. Matt Smith at least knows what kind of movie he's in, and he's just going for it, I guess. Past that, this movie is a dumpster fire of a film, and it is well deserving of its F status here. Munsters. I have no connection to the Munsters franchise. I did not watch the original series. I have no idea what it is, but I went into this and I made it through about, I think, 20 minutes of this movie. I think the fun retro sets were fun, and that's about it. Everything else was excruciating about this movie. My roommate told me that the actual one is like monsters living in our world and trying to adjust. I'm like, hey, that's a concept. That actually sounds like a concept that would be interesting. How about that? That's not what this movie is. This movie is just misery incarnate. Nope. I was actually surprised with how kind of mixed people were on this. This film, I really, really, really enjoyed. In fact, I enjoyed it quite a bit more than Us, which was Jordan Peele's last film. I love the fact that it was his brand of horror that he does, which kind of has that nice mix of a little bit of comedy in there, but the big thing is he really likes to put in kind of undertones of various issues. Like, it's not beating you over the head, but if you really look for them, they're very clear and they're there. But he's also combining that with a alien invasion movie with almost like this Spielberg like Jaws. I thought the characters were fun. I thought that the undertones of animal abuse in making spectacle was an interesting idea. I thought the alien was interesting. And I liked the Akira slide too. That was fun. So this one honestly probably made it into my top 10 for the year. I really enjoyed it. I know that some people were kind of disappointed, but that was not me. I'm not one of them. I'm not one of the disappointed ones. It's going right up here into the A tier, where it belongs in my oh-so-humble opinion. Pinocchio, a.k.a. the good Pinocchio. I am a huge animation buff. I love animation. This one had beautiful stop-motion animation. It was such a unique style. It wasn't really anything like the other house styles of other animation companies like Leica or Aardman. This one really had its own distinct vision that felt very, very Guillermo del Toro. I love the setting they put it into. I like that they actually made Pinocchio kind of a brat, and he actually does have to learn how to be a good boy, I guess. The themes of death and kind of immortality and what it means to be human, all of that, how that connects back is really interesting, and how they approach that. It doesn't feel like any other take on Pinocchio before. It feels very unique. This one was brilliant. I really liked it. Guillermo del Toro strikes again. Prey! I was about to say a good Punisher movie. We haven't even had that yet. A good Predator movie. I really enjoyed this one. I enjoyed the setting, how they put it, the time period. Making it a period piece, I think, was a genius idea. A lot of people said it didn't make sense that she's so bad at hunting and then is able to defeat it at the end. I disagree. I think it did a really great job of showing her observative? That's not even a word. Her observative nature, which helped her to, in the end, defeat the creature. I thought that they made the Predator scary again. It's good. They just did a really good job of taking a lot of the old tropes of the older movies and not having it feel like they were just ripping off them, because they were repurposing them in a new way that was fresh. It's good. Maybe not A good, but it's a B plus, I would say. B plus good. And speaking of more movies that are a shock, Puss in Boots, The Last Wish. I had not seen the original one until right before I was about to go see this one, because I didn't know if I needed to see it or not. The original one is so painfully kind of mediocre. It just sort of exists. There's nothing really to latch on to. Most of the jokes don't land. It's not actually really that good. This one, on the other hand, one of the great things about Into the Spider-Verse is it's really caused a lot of these animators to really think outside the box and get super creative with animation styles. I love the kind of picture book style on it. I think that it's probably the funniest of the Shrek franchise, possibly out of all of them, except for maybe Shrek 2, which is still really good. But this one is really, really funny. It's just like, it's completely fun. Go see it with a big crowd. It's worth it. You get to be at the top of the B tier, though. That's being the king of the B's. That's pretty good. RRR. This one is one of the weird ones that for some reason everyone latched onto and had to watch this year. It got great word of mouth. Kind of came out of nowhere. It was worth it. There's a reason it got such good word of mouth. It's super fun. Is this weird mix of great music, bombastic action sequences, over-the-top characters, yet it still manages to find some kind of like human element that allows you to actually somehow take it all serious, despite all the craziness involved. It's really hard to think of a movie like it this year, but it's also just a really good feel-good movie. And the fact it's 3 hours, and I didn't even notice that when it ended, because it goes by so quick, because it's just so much fun. And that dance sequence, that thing's pretty nuts. So I really, really enjoyed this film. I enjoyed the sound and music work especially. It is for sure going into this A tier here. Strange World, on the other hand, you did not do me proud. You have not made me proud at all. Strange World, it looks as good as any of the Disney animation movies. It looks fantastic. It got a lot of attention for its representation, some negative, some positive because of it. But Strange World, the biggest problem, and a lot of people are targeting that representation for why it's bad. It's not bad because of the representation, okay? Let's get that one thing straight right now. This thing is bad because it's so lazily written. Its core concept is that they live on this world where they're basically inside this body. But it doesn't tell you that until like the third act, where it's like this twist ending. So you're stuck for the whole movie where they have to hide their core concept. So it'd be like if you watched like a Toy Story movie, but they waited until like the third act to show that Buzz and Woody are actually alive. Did you know? What a waste. Just if they had said that they're in a body from the beginning, they could have had a lot more fun with the concept. The biggest problem is the characters just aren't that interesting. So, I mean, the main character is just this 40-year-old farmer who just goes, why do I have to be here? Basically for the entire movie. This is a movie with no teeth. Disney really dropped the ball this year. It gets to be right next to Lightyear over here, which I think is where it belongs. Tar. Also nominated for Oscars this year. And this is where I'm going to get into some hot takes, okay? I think Tar is a really good movie. I do not think it is a great movie. I think that Tar has a lot of issues despite its strengths. Cate Blanchett is incredible in this film. She really does a great job playing just this captivating persona. And it carries the entire film, in my opinion. Even though the cinematography is also really, really good. But my main issue with it usually comes at the end. I think it has a bad ending. I think there's a great point where she's like watching, I'm not going to spoil it, but she's watching this movie where she's like watching this person explain music, and you go, that's where it should have ended. But it goes on for like another 15 minutes, and the other 15 minutes is stupid, and they should have cut it, and that other part should have been the ending, in my opinion. It has a lot in common with the film Whiplash. It's showing the music industry, a toxic relationships between people in power positions within the music industry. It's got a captivating central performance, but it is essentially Whiplash with no teeth. I think Whiplash is one of the best movies made in the last decade, so that's unfair. In the end, I think it's a very strong movie. I think it's good. I think it's been overblown. I also think that oftentimes they have her being smart, basically by name dropping. It's supposed to, I think, be that she thinks she's smarter than everyone in the room and she's not actually that smart. But I also kind of think that it's maybe the writers think they're the smartest people in the room, and they're also just not that smart. So I'm not entirely convinced it's entirely intentional. That may have ended up just being a happy accident. Tar is great, but you get to be new king of the bees. Sorry. People are going to hate me for that, but that's where you belong, in my opinion. But you don't have to agree with me. You can like it. It's a good movie. I don't begrudge anyone for liking it. I still put it at the top of the bees. The Adam Project. I barely remember this movie. I remember that I liked Ryan Reynolds in it. And I remember I really liked the little kid in it because I thought the kid did an amazing job of approximating Ryan Reynolds' personality, which really sold the idea that they're the same person. So I thought that was really good. Everything else in the movie, boring, generic science fiction that's targeted at a family audience. There's nothing really special or anything to latch onto here. It's perfectly passable to kill a couple hours. Past that, you won't remember it. Or at least I didn't. Maybe you remember it. But I found this instantly disposable, as they say. The Batman. I'm also a big comic book fan, so I really like my comic book movies. I, however, do not like my comic book movies when they're like Batman v Superman. I do like them when they're like The Batman. So I really am impressed with kind of what Matt Reeves has been doing with his career. He's been focusing more on kind of big blockbuster movies, which I think is fine as long as you're doing stuff that's cool. He did like Cloverfield, and then amazing work on the Planet of the Apes series, which I think is one of the best trilogies that we've seen in a while, even though he didn't do the first one. The Batman is, again, a really interesting take. He knew that people wanted to see more of the detective element, so he really leaned into it and made it kind of this noir movie. Beautifully shot. The action looks great. It's a little bloated and too long. I think especially at the ending where they could cut off probably the last 15 minutes and not lose anything, including that Joker cameo. Otherwise, I think it is a brilliant start to this new series. I'm very excited to see where they go with it. You get to be in the A's. The Black Phone. This was another great one. This was good. It was really marketed as horror. I would say it's probably more thriller with kind of like almost supernatural elements, which I really enjoyed. I thought Ethan Hawke did a great job as the villain. I think that it is nothing outright amazing, I think, but it's a very, very solid, good time. Maybe not good time. It is about child kidnapping and murder, but it's a very, very good thriller with cool elements. I enjoyed it. You get to be in here. The Fabelmans. This is another one where I may have some hot takes on it again. People really love this movie. A lot of people are calling it like a classic of cinema and stuff. I thought it was fine. A lot of it kind of is disconnected, so it almost feels like a mini-series of 3 episodes, where one's the first one, where he basically moves to 3 locations over his life. If you don't know, Fabelmans is basically very loosely based on Spielberg's own life. He moved to 3 locations, and each 3 location kind of has its own like mini story in it, which makes it feel very kind of episodic, which I felt was kind of jarring in it. The big thing is it tries to create a lot of sympathy, I think, for the mother and nostalgia for his relationship with his mother. I thought that, what's her face? Who played the mother? I don't remember. I'm not going to look it up. I found her performance really overbearing. I found her incredibly annoying. And I found the character herself to come off as incredibly selfish. Now, whether that actually happened with Steven Spielberg's real mother or not, that's besides the point. It really is that this character, I didn't feel sympathy for her, mostly because I kind of hated her. So I think that took a lot of wind out of this movie's sails, which really relied super heavily on that relationship. There's still so much good in this, though. Spielberg's one of the best directors who's ever lived for a reason. A scene where he's directing a movie is so good when he's a little kid and he's like got his hands on, he's like watching it on his little hands. That's great. Or when he's recreating it with trains. There's a great scene with him and his uncle that's just the high point of the movie, I think. So I'm not going to say it's a bad movie. I think it's still a solid movie. I do not think it's a classic, though. I think it's got so many problems with it. And I think it really falls into Spielberg's sense of over-sentimentality he can sometimes land into when he's working on his movies. But there's a lot to like about it, but I think that there's a lot of schmaltziness not to like and some characters that it's a no for me. She got nominated for Best Actress, too, which is stunning to me because I thought that performance was all over the place and really, really should have been toned back. I was not a fan. I'll tell you what, Spielberg, I'll put you behind Chip and Dale and Ambulance. I'm going to get so much flack for that, but I don't care. It is what it is. The Gray Man. The Gray Man is a movie that exists. I have been pretty disappointed with the Russo brothers' career after they've left Marvel and kind of gone their own way because they showed so much potential in Marvel. Some of my favorite movies they directed, Winter Soldier, Civil War, Infinity War, Endgame. 4 of those movies are some of the best ones Marvel has done. So I was really excited to see what they do when they left Marvel. But so far, they have been really struggling to find their feeding on this. Yeah, The Gray Man is just, it's a generic spy movie that has some really great action sequences, but the action sequences look as if all the characters are super soldiers, because it's like they're still making Captain America movies. So it does have some really cool action set pieces, but man, is it so generic that it's instantly forgettable. I barely remember. I like Chris Evans a lot. I'll say that. Chris Evans was a fun, over-the-top villain who seemed to know he needed to inject this movie with a little life. So he's got that going for him. Sorry, Gray Man, you're not awful. You got some fun set pieces, but you're not going anywhere into the Spy Hall of Fame. The Lost City, a shockingly decent movie. I remember seeing the trailers and going like, that's a movie I'm never going to watch, but I did watch it, so they got me. So I thought it was fun. I thought the characters are a good time. I thought the concept's pretty fun. It was consistently got laughs out of me. I thought Daniel Radcliffe is 2 thumbs up. I think he's about ready to start the Daniel Radcliffe renaissance here, especially between this and Weird. Yeah, just a fun little comedy romp. As you can see, I got a lot of B's. The Menu. I really enjoyed The Menu. I thought that this movie was 99.99999% carried by the performances in it. I mean, yes, it has a good kind of like mystery thriller element, but man, Ralph Fiennes is so good in it, and Anna Taylor-Joy is really great too, and Nicholas Hoult. Those 3 all just do a fantastic job in the film. The film is surprisingly really funny at times. It keeps me hooked on the mystery, and honestly, the cinematography is also pretty good because it makes what should be kind of pretentious food actually look like Yeah, I'd probably eat that. It wouldn't be very filling, but I'd try some. Overall, yeah, it's the performances just keep me hooked, and I really, really enjoyed them. So you get to go live in the upper B tier. The Northman. Robert Eggers. He's really kind of been making a name for himself. I would say he's good at these movies that kind of are very introspective and slower paced. This one, yeah, it sold itself on being a big revenge flick and showed a lot of the action scenes in it, but it really doesn't have much. It's a small piece where they kind of go to an island, and it's spent most of the time him kind of like sullenly trying to get like revenge. Performances are great. I love the Norse mythology and culture they put in there. I like that they made the Vikings actually terrible people, which was pretty good. And overall, I found it to be, yeah, just great film, beautiful too. Really great cinematography. Robert Eggers, he's delivering. Lighthouse was also fantastic, so he's just doing a great job. I am torn on it where I'm going to put this guy. Do I put him down here? I'm going to put him up here. I liked it enough. I think it gets to be an A tier movie. Good job, Northman. All right, Sea Beast. Yeah, this one was a surprisingly really good one from Netflix Animation, which they have had some actually surprise hits. I really liked their, what was the Christmas one? Claws. Yeah, that one was good. I enjoyed this one. This one's also really good. The animation is great. The hunting sequences with the boats and the monsters, great. They're so much fun. My main complaint with it would be it's really derivative of other animation stuff, particularly of How to Train Your Dragon, and it doesn't really do as good of a job as How to Train Your Dragon of building the relationship between the human characters and the monsters. And then it also, the ending, I don't want to spoil the ending, but the ending basically, everything's basically solved by a monologue that felt like, if this has been a problem for that long, it's probably not going to get solved by that. Sorry, but it's still super fun. It's really well animated, and I honestly had a good time with it. I enjoyed it. Oh, my stuff's starting to fall off the edge. I have to start stacking them up a little better. The Whale! It's a whale of a tale, I tell you, son. A whale of a tale. The Whale. This is the comeback piece for Brendan Fraser, and a lot of people are really rooting for him here in this Oscars, so he gets to have that comeback story. He does give a wonderful performance in this, in a movie that I personally think is fairly mediocre across the board. It's based on a stage play, and it feels very stagey, but it also feels like it's not a very good play either, I can't imagine. The story didn't connect with me. I thought it was melodramatic, and I thought that Brendan Fraser was amazing and is the best thing in this mediocre piece. So it can hang up here with Elvis, though. It gets to be top of the seas. That's a really good accomplishment, let me tell you what. The Woman King, a movie that's kind of just vanished, like it never even existed. It's not very fair, I would say, because I quite enjoyed this movie. A lot of people's sticking point still is the fact that it has a lot of historical inaccuracies, which I don't know when we started being concerned about historical inaccuracies in Hollywood movies, but it probably is more because of the case that the people they're based on were enslaving their own people, which is definitely a no-no. So that may be the sticking point on this one, but I never quite got that complaint because I thought they did address it in the movies. Maybe they didn't go very in-depth and it's not a big part of it, but they definitely do address the fact that they were selling people into slavery, if I'm remembering right. And I remember that kind of factors into some of their decision-making on how they handle some situations. But maybe I'm misremembering, but I could have sworn it did. So I had a spoiler in there, so I may edit that out. I was mentioning a dynamic between Viola Davis and somebody, and massive spoiler, I would say Viola Davis has good performance and good relationship with the other characters in the movies, so I do not ruin it for anyone who does want to see it, because I did enjoy it, and yeah, you should check it out. I'll put it over here. Top of B's again. Maybe I need to create like a B- category just to spread this out a bit. This is getting a little... It's my fault for liking too many movies and thinking too many movies are just good enough. But speaking of movies that are not just good enough, Thor: Love and Thunder, which broke my heart because I really love Taika Waititi. I love most of the stuff he's done, his movies. I thought Thor Ragnarok was one of the best Marvel movies. This, however, is something that feels like it was kind of, half-assed. It's got all these ingredients that are out of whack, okay? So basically it pushes the comedy way more than everything else. So all the other elements get lost. The story is like loosely written, no dramatic elements, action scenes. There's a couple good ones, but most of them are just they're just CGI blobs, basically. Chris Hemsworth is still super funny in it. There are funny moments. There's some really good stuff. Christian Bale is wasted, but yeah, this is just a massive disappointment. If I was to pick like one of my most disappointing movies of the year, it would be this one, because I did have high expectations for this because I like Taika Waititi so much and I liked the previous movies so much. So to see this kind of just fall flat on its face, that was very sad. Top Gun Maverick, everybody's favorite movie this year. Well, I don't know if that's true, but it was very popular. It did very well at the box office. Some producer better be, really, really thanking Tom Cruise that he didn't let them put it just straight onto streaming, because it made, $1.5 billion. So he kind of pulled their fat out of the fire on that choice. I am personally not the biggest fan of the original Top Gun. I think it's fine. It's nothing really I'll go to bat for. It's just okay. This movie, however, this is a sequel that really just kind of gets everything right. First of all, the fact they're using practical jets, the cinematography, the fact it didn't get nominated for cinematography is a crime. They had to specially design cameras to be able to put it into the cabin of the jets. On top of that, they had cameras strapped to jets. They had to be able to film aerial footage. This movie is so effective because not only is it honoring the first movie, pushing the characters forward in new, interesting ways that doesn't feel like they've just been sitting in a cryo chamber for 20 years. It's more than 20 years. When did this original come out? I don't know. Anyways, it feels like the characters naturally have been progressing off screen. It manages to both be this great continuation of the original, up the ante, while at the same time giving amazing just practical flight sequences and combat sequences. That's just really fun and really accessible. I was shocked how much of a blast I had with this movie. This may be my third favorite movie of the year as a result. Pretty good. Okay, what do we got left? We're almost done. Turning Red. This is another one people are probably going to hate me for. I think there is a lot to love about Turning Red. I think that it's beautifully animated. I think that it's touching on a subject that really has not been covered very much, and that's basically development for young girls and what they kind of have to go through and how they feel. And I applaud Pixar for really tackling a subject that, for whatever reason, a lot of these animation companies want to shy away from. I do think it's an important movie, and I think a lot of young girls are really going to like this movie, and they'll definitely look back on it fondly once they've grown up. I wish I could love this movie as much as everyone else. When it comes down to it, I found all the little girl characters excruciatingly annoying. I did not want to be around them, and every time they were hanging out and talking, I wanted to go into another room and do something else. They were so good at making these little kids realistic little kids that little kids are sometimes annoying. That's just how they are. And I get that fact, but this is a movie too. And when little kids are just hanging out together and being annoying, sometimes you just want to go into the other room and ignore them. And unfortunately, half the time the little kids are on screen, that is my reaction, is I don't want to hang out and listen to you guys while you're talking about wanting to go to your boy band things, okay? That's not even the real problem. Problem is they're irritating to me, but people are going to hate that opinion, I know, but that is just my gut reaction, I guess. So even though I have a ton of respect for this movie, I found the characters annoying, and I really hated the third act, that they had to have this big action showdown in a movie that you don't need a big action showdown for. It's not an action film. This is basically a coming of age drama. Why are we needing that? Anyways, so I don't think it's bad. I think it's one of the it's definitely, I can recognize the strong qualities in it, even if my personal enjoyment was less than probably what people would hope. But I'm still going to put it pretty high in the B's, all things considered, despite despite my misgivings about some of this stuff. Honestly, as much as I said people aren't going to like my opinion about Fabelmans and Tar, that one's probably going to be the one that gets me in trouble. So, sorry. I mean, if you like it, that's great. I'd love it. I mean, I still gave it a B. Massive oh my God, this title. The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. So if you are a Nick Cage fan, this is like your dream, I'm guessing. And I do like Nick Cage a lot. I think he's a lot of fun. He's had one of the most interesting careers you could possibly have. But unfortunately, I ended up seeing this movie on an airplane, which is probably the least ideal way to possibly see this film. I still found it funny, but I don't know, maybe just because I was on an airplane and not in the best, scenario for watch. The best way to watch this would be with a big group on a Friday night in a theater, or with your group of friends who all really like Nick Cage and can kind of get into the movie together. Being on an airplane with ear pods and listening to it, not quite the same experience. I think I still overall enjoyed it. I don't know, I'd give it like a B- or something. Again, I did not see it in the best conditions to watch the movie in. But I thought Nick Cage was funny in it. I thought, what's his face? Freaking Mandalorian. Yeah, Mandalorian dude. Why am I blanking on his name? Pedro Pascal. That's it, yeah. I thought he was really funny in it, too, and playing a character he's usually not playing because he's usually a super tough guy in most of his stuff. So it's fun to see him in a role like that. So overall, yeah, I'd say it was entertaining enough, even if I didn't get quite the kick out of it. Some people did. Uncharted. I have no attachment to this franchise. I have never played the games or anything, so a lot of people who have played the games really dislike this movie because apparently it does not do it justice. I really don't have the ability to discern that at all because I've never played the game. I thought this movie was the definition of, it exists. It's nothing offensive. I actually think that Tom Holland and Mark Wahlberg had kind of a fun dynamic together. I thought some of the puzzle stuff was interesting, with the cross being a key that is used in lots of different ways for various parts of the treasure hunting. It's not like they just used it once and got rid of it. So I really like that. Plus, it's an Indiana Jones ripoff. You're always going to be compared to that, and let's be honest, it doesn't come close to it. And then the third act gets completely ridiculous and basically turns into a video game. It is a video game movie that's far from the worst, but far from being anything worth remembering. So you get to be down in the seas. Good job, Sony. You strike again. Weird is a lot of fun. If you like Weird Al Yankovic, you will get into this movie, I think. The fact that it is a complete parody whose goal is just to straight up lie to the audience is pretty fun and funny. I think Daniel Radcliffe is a lot of fun in the role, and I think the fact it just never takes itself seriously. It just wears its intentions on its sleeve to the point where you can't help but find it a little fun. Here, I had a good time with this one. You could be right here next to Chippendale here. White Noise. I had this one suggested for me by a friend who said they really, really enjoyed it. I wish I had the same experience because I personally thought that this was a movie that didn't know when to make its characters just shut up. Their characters just constantly run their mouths, and they're just basically endlessly just waxing poetic to the point where I was thoroughly annoyed with basically everyone in this movie and just, to be honest, its general direction. I was not a fan, and it belongs down here in D. So I'm probably speeding up a little bit because I'm near the end. And the last one is a nice, easy, light movie to talk about. Now, this is a very heavy film, which made it makes for a difficult watch at times. Overall, I thought it had brilliant performances and stuff. The fact that I went in cold, I actually really liked that because I didn't know exactly what was happening, and you learn more about what's going on, these women's lives, kind of the stuff they've been dealing with. Even though it is just a group of women talking in a room, it's high stakes, so it still really keeps you engaged. It's just very heavy subject matter, which makes for a more challenging watch. I think I rate it higher if not for the fact that it has a lot in common with other kind of locked room movies, And these films really have to rely heavily on, first of all, the actors, which it does. It does a really great job with that. But the other thing it needs to do is interesting blocking and stuff, which I think it fell very short on that. Most of the scenes where they're talking, they'll be talking for about 15, 20 minutes in a room together, but they'll all just sit on the same hay bale or stand in the same spot and talk. The blocking was really lacking. When you watch something like 12 Angry Men or something like that, you'll see a lot more movement. Even that, they're sitting in chairs and stuff, but they'll get up, they'll do stuff, they'll move about the room to kind of engage in different ways. I personally found that in most of the scenes where they're all together, they're way too static, which is where I take off probably the most points on it. But for the most part, this is a very good movie. I thought this did a phenomenal job tackling very heavy subject matter with interesting characters, and I thought the dialogue was all sharp. I think it was strong, even though I think that it's a difficult watch and blocking could have been better. So it gets to be top of B, I think. So that's it. Those are my rankings for this year of 2022 and how I would sort them all out and all the movies that I have seen from this year. What are some of the movies you saw? Where would you possibly list them in this tier list? Are there any movies I missed? I know there are, because I did not see Triangle of Sadness. It's on my list. I hope to reach it before the Oscars. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed this. This was a new thing I did. I don't know if it was any fun or entertaining or if people enjoyed it. I'll see if I ever do it again, but I had fun recording it, so I hope you had fun watching, and join me next time. Be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed it. We'll be back to more historical content coming up soon. Thank you very much, and keep those reels turning as always.